Okay, thank you everyone for coming to today's webinar. So we'll take a look at ways to trim and simplify your template with the CTC CIM Manager Suite. Let's take a look at the agenda. So first, we'll go over the reasons why you might want to, or you might need to, trim and simplify your template. Then we'll go on to talk about how to clean and organize the line types. Then maybe trim annotation styles and layers, manage layers in Excel, and also manage survey tools in Excel as well. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Jay Kwan. I'm a technical consultant at SolidCAD and Infrastructure and GIS. I've been sort of in the CAD role since 2013 or so. Recently started teaching for SolidCAD, teaching and consulting for SolidCAD in 2018. Before that, I guess I played some CAD manager role for my consultant company that I work for. So SolidCAD provides a lot of services that can help you as far as training, consulting, support, different integrations, custom programming, customization if we need that. I won't go over this too much. So let's get right into our topic. So reasons why we would want to take a look at trimming and simplifying our template. So usually it's because we kind of inherited a set of standards and maybe it was too much. Maybe it was a sort of like something that's kind of copied off a larger organization. Maybe you don't need that level of detail in your templates. Maybe it might be a matter of the company transitioning more and more towards the civil side from the AutoCAD side. And as you know, as that kind of thing happens, there's less reliance on layers and more reliance on styles. It could just be a change of team. Maybe, you know, like formerly team members required a lot of, they preferred having a lot of layers and different, so a lot of detail in the template. But maybe the new team prefers sort of a more simpler style. Or maybe it's a matter of trying to make your template pass quality checks. Anybody that's worked for on the job has to go through the federal government, has dealt with the public works quality checks, for example. And if you have a small and tight template setup, it's a lot easier to make that pass quality checks like that. So many reasons why you might want to trim down on your templates. Personally, I would kind of line myself with the less is more style of thinking. Try to minimize the number of items that you're dealing with as much as possible. Because CAD management, it's sort of like we still have to keep our utilization time up, even though we have CAD management duties, right? So, okay. Now let's take a look at line types. So line type file management. Well, let's take a look at that. So I'm going to open up a file or just browse my folder here and take a look at a typical line type file, right? I'll just edit that in Notepad. So most of our time, well, yeah, out of the box, the way we manage our line types when it comes to, you know, the specific style is basically just through some kind of a text editor. Your support file folder has a .lin file that you might customize and add your own kind of thing. Usually there's a custom section near the end kind of thing. If you're not used to coding these line types, it can be it's definitely daunting at first. You know, it's just a lot of codes to remember. You have to reference what these codes mean, and then you have to try to, and then when it comes to time to test these things out, it's pretty rough because you have to make the change. It's sort of a guess because you're just working on a code. Save it, load it, try it out, that kind of thing. So let's take a look how we can streamline that a little bit. So in the CTC CIM Manager Suite, there's a Linetype Manager tool. So let's fire that up and see what that looks like. So it kind of remembers the setting that it's had before. Oh, here we go. Civil 3D being Civil 3D. All right. Let me just fire that back up. So Linetype Manager, it's one of the light green tools, or a light blue tool, sorry, which means that it's free. Like it's not free like for a week or two or for a trial period or anything. You can just install some manager tools and use the Linetype Manager as long as you want. So take a look at that as soon as I get fired back up here. All right. So I'll just open a reference drawing and let's take a look at that tool again. It's funny how it's been rock solid all day, and then as soon as I start a webinar, it crashes on me. All right. Let's start that back up. Okay. So I have the same Linetype file that I was looking at just a moment ago open, and it shows each line type, has a name, description, and the code. So you can still look at the code, but the nice thing about this interface is that you can see a preview down below. You can view the preview at different scales. So I will leave it at 0.5. That seems to be a fairly decent one for metric. And if you ever need to add a line type, it's fairly simple. So let's say I want to start with sort of like a center line type style. And then maybe I'll just copy that. So you can set up your own line type style here. So, well, what that means is, you know, whatever line type you have in your list, you can review it easily here using the previews. You can sort of, any ones that you don't need, you can delete them. Any ones that, you know, if you want to reorder anything, you can move it up and down easily. And this is all without having to manually edit the text file, which can kind of, you know, sometimes lead to errors as well. So for now, I'll leave it at that, because for what we're talking about today, we're kind of talking about cleanup. So, I mean, if you're looking for specific kind of line types, there's a search box as well, so that if you need to hunt down a certain line type that you want to get rid of, it's easy to find using a filter, either in the name or the description. Right, so we do have follow-up sessions where we focus on building up your template, and that's maybe when we'll talk about actually putting together a new line type. Okay, so I'll close that for now. Okay, so that is a Linetype Manager. Again, that's a free tool in the suite. Now let's move on to sort of layers and styles. So one of the biggest things, let me just open up another drawing actually. One of the biggest things about cleaning up a template is it's really hard to keep track of what is being used where. And that makes it kind of difficult to get rid of things sometimes. So what are the tools, like out of the box tools that we have? So we have purge, right? So when it comes to annotation styles, like text styles, dimension styles, leader styles, that kind of thing, we do have the purge tool, and we can take a look at recently, sort of recently, they put in the non-purgeable items category, right? And so if I select one of these, so we'll focus on layers and styles, I guess, annotation styles. So it'll sort of, if you're lucky, it'll tell you exactly where it is that you can find these things. The objects that are using the text style or the layer that is preventing you from getting rid of it. So if you're lucky, you can kind of, it's a little bit more informative. If you're not lucky, sometimes it can be a little bit cryptic as to where things are being used, especially if it's being used in another style, for example. Often there's just sort of like the style ID. You don't really get much more information than that. And that can become a difficult task of sort of going through your settings and your styles and trying to hunt these things one by one, right? So where am I using a certain style? Okay, I'm using that layer on a certain style. Maybe it's being used in this style or something like that, and that can be quite a bit of time-consuming task. So here, let's take a look at the template tracker. So this tool is designed to help you keep track of where things are, to first of all find it, get some context, and then figure out what you want to do with it. So the kinds of things that you can search for are layers, text styles, dimension style, multi-leader styles. So let's take a look at layers, for example. So if I scroll down, maybe just looking at all these different table styles that I have, table layers that I have, maybe I don't want all those layers. Maybe I'll just pick one of them and say, maybe I just want it to belong into the general CIM table layer. Let's trim down some of these things. So when I select one of these sub-layers, it tells me exactly what styles that layer is being used in. And, if I'm wondering if I should swap it out, if I want to get some context on that. So for example, if I'm taking a look at a fitting table style, I can take a look at edit style layers, see what other items belong in that style. This is sort of like a preview of the display tab of that style. So you can get a preview of what other items are there and what other layers are being used for those items. So once you review that, maybe it gives you more context and information and lets you make a decision on what you want to do with it. Well, I'm going to try to trim down as many of these table styles as possible. So let's say for this layer, I want to basically grab all the instances where it's being used and swap it out with the general CIM table. So what I can do is just select all of these, go swap layer, and just choose general CIM and OK. So that will swap it all out. Now, when I select the C-table-PATT, it's showing that it's not being used in any styles. So at this point, I can just take this layer and delete that, right? So, I mean, you do have, when it comes to layers, let me just open up the layer manager or layer properties. Using the out-of-box tools, you do have tools to manage your layer a little bit as well. So for example, CNO MATC, like I'm not going to be able to delete that layer because it's in use. It's being used by other styles. This doesn't tell me exactly where it's being used. I can take a look at purge tool and it'll sort of tell me, but it's going to tell me it's being used by some styles, but no more clue than that. I can merge this layer and that will sort of force it to go away and some other layer will be used instead. So I can merge it to Ciano, but then I'm not getting any contextual information on like where is this being used and what styles? Do I really want to merge it or not? I can't really look into it before I do. So it becomes sort of like a blind guessing game. Well, let's take a look at the template tracker again. So that's the kind of thing that it's meant to solve. Take a look at a layer, right? Take a look at a layer, get some context on where it's being used. Most of the time, these label style, it's only ones that are being used. So, yeah, just grab the instances, swap them out, and keep on going kind of thing. Get some context, make your decision. Let's take a look at the text styles as well. So maybe this S4 style is being used in a few block definitions. Maybe I want to standardize that and want to swap it out instead. So I'll swap it out to standard style, for example. And then I can sort of delete that text style as well. So that's going to help you trim down a lot of things and sort of in a more informed, intelligent way than sort of trying to, especially when it comes to text styles, it's very difficult to replace it because there's no equivalent to sort of merge style kind of thing. So, all right, so let's take a look at what's next. So as far as template manager or template tracker goes, that's his primary use. Hunt down things, get its context, get rid of it if you need to. Let's take a look at managing layers overall. So, all right, so one of the tools that we get is Layer Boss, and basically it lets us export layers into Excel and then manage it that way. That lets you leverage all the Excel tools, like just simple filling, for example, from one cell to others, or even leveraging formulas. So we're going to go over some useful formulas that you might find handy. Also, if you're working in a multi-department environment, it's a lot easier to manage the layers if you can, put it in an Excel sheet and pass it around. Because it's not always handy to manage it in a drawing file. You pass it to sort of like a department head that's kind of might want to take a look at it, but they might not even have Civil 3D installed or whatever because it's not part of their everyday job, right? So it just makes it a lot easier if you can share files around in a Excel file to manage your layers. Well, let's take a look at how we can do that. So export, I'll take a look at, first of all, let's just take a look at object layers. So object layers are these layers here, like in the drawing settings. So essentially, what are the layers that Civil 3D objects are going to land on by default? I'll export the set of object layers that are currently in this drawing. So you can select a specific template, but I'll just use a current drawing for the sake of this demo. And I'll just save that. I have one there already, but I'll just overwrite it. Okay, so that's going to give you an option to open the file after it gets exported. So here we have the object layers sort of represented. By the way, each of the boxes that you fill in, it has a drop down set up with macros, so that it kind of sort of guides you into sort of like the inputs that it's going to recognize. So right now I have some suffixes set up so that some objects, so for example, alignment profiles, corridors, and things, anytime I create one of those, it's going to add the name of the alignment profile or corridor to the end of the layer name, which, you know, maybe that's the way you want to go, but going with the theme of simplifying and trimming, maybe that's not the way you want to go, right? So maybe you just want standard layers for all the objects. So in this case, it becomes easier to just set it to none and just fill that for the entire column. And same with the suffix value here. So I'll just fill that. And just save it. And then at that point, you can just bring it back in. So re-import that, select the Excel file. Okay, and next. And okay, so all the ones that's making the changes and it's okay, like updated, it's gonna show up in green. So there's a few of them showing up in green. And I'll go okay. So there's more that we could have done, I guess, with the object layers, but the regular layers tend to be more interesting. Actually, that didn't update. There might be a bug with the, sorry, that I often have the latest sort of test versions installed, and I might have hit up on one of the bugs there. I know it. I know the regular sort of release I've tried recently, it worked for sure. But let's take a look at the regular layers. So export drawing layers. So in this case, you can export from the current drawing, also external references, or just include additional drawings like templates. Now we have separate templates for like page setup sometimes and that kind of thing. So you can include all of them in. For now, I'll just select it to default. Again, for sort of line types, it's going to fill the values in, or it's going to populate the available line types as a dropdown. And if you want to include the line types from any specific line type file, you can put a check mark on it and include that. As far as the other options go, I'll leave it alone and I'll just export that to Excel. Okay, and I'll just open that. So that's what it's going to look like. All right, so here's a number of things we can do with this, right? So first of all, being in Excel, you can open it up for all kinds of formulas. Right now, these layers are fairly decent as far as you know, case goes. You know, it's not a huge mix of lowercase, propercase, uppercase. Most of it's uppercase, but if you want to catch some of these layers that are not in the right case, I mean, you can easily do that with the formula, right? So let's take a look at that. So for example, I'll go, you know, just a simple something as, you know, just put in a formula for upper. Choose that cell and fill that. So that'll make everything uppercase. And at that point, you can just copy this entire column and paste it into here, right? You know, maybe you want to get fancy and say, you know, like make everything uppercase except one of the default ones that you probably shouldn't change, like the def points or whatever. So maybe you go, you know, if this is equal to def points, oops, then just use it. Otherwise, make it uppercase, that kind of thing. So all sorts of things you can do with formulas. So I'll just take that and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll just take that and just paste it here. Just remember to paste it as a value, right? And same things, other things, sort of other similar things you can do, right? What else can we do? So what if we want to populate the description, right? Okay, so let's take a look at that kind of scenario. So for now, I'll just delete that column. So what if, for example, these C-ano ones, right? If we, let's say we want to do something like, well, let's do a search. Look for ano in this cell. Let's see, what row am I on? There we go. Okay. All right. So search found a number at 3-character spot, which means, you know, I can convert that to sort of is number like a true or false. Well, if it's true, well, now that it's kind of converted into true or false, I can include that into an if formula, kind of. So if I say, you know, if that's the case, if we find the word, the letters ano in it, then what we can do is, you know, make it annotation, return a text annotation. Otherwise, you know, well, I'll just leave the otherwise alone and just go like that. So that's going to basically look for cells and return that. Otherwise, maybe I'll just return nothing. So just 2 closed commas, right? And this is something that you can nest, right? So if you can just say, I'm going to expand this area a little bit where the formulas are. And just Alt-Enter. This is a kind of thing that you can nest. So you can, you know, copy, paste that, and look for something else and replace it with something else. So BLDG, for example. Then we'll give it a description of building. Right, so we can fill that this way. We can fill this way. Okay. So that didn't quite work, but that's all right. You can, well, we've gotten one part to work. So, you know, you can nest these things. You can catch all sorts of descriptions and replace them. Let's take a look at a couple other use cases. So, what about just standardizing this line type, right? So for that, you know, you can just say, well, what if it ends in number 2? Just drop the number 2. I kind of already have it written out, so I'll just paste that in. So I'll do that. So as long as it's in the I column, yep. So basically, you know, take a look at the rightmost character of that column. Is that a 2? Well, if it is, then just drop the last character. If not, just use what's there, that kind of thing. So here I'll fill that. So basically it's going to standardize, like, you know, sometimes you have a line type that's 2, sometimes half, that kind of thing. You can just quickly fill all that in. And, you know, all of these formulas, you don't have to come up with your own, right? You can just, this session is going to be recorded. You can easily just pause the session, just copy that down, that kind of thing. And one last example I want to sort of go over. I'll just delete that column to clear that out. What if you want to make certain layers non-plotting if it's a certain color, right? So you can do something like if the color is greater than, let's say, 200. So if it's like all these colors that have a number 200, if it's greater than that, let's say, you know, we'll say yes. If not, no. So we can go ahead and check these things, and you know, anything that we want to catch, we can, and then copy that in. So those are sort of some of the things that we can do. It just opens up. I'm not the best at Excel formulas, but you know, every organization has somebody that's pretty good with them, and you can easily just manage entire lists of layers that way. And they're pretty easy to learn as well. So I'll close that for now. Now, there's another additional thing about opening it up into Excel is that not only does it, you know, let you leverage the Excel, like the power of Excel, you can leverage visual scripting with Dynamo as well. So you might not have looked into visual scripting with Dynamo, but it's pretty useful, pretty interesting. Let me just show you a quick example of that. So I'll open up this little thing. So basically, this is something quick that I just put together in a few minutes. So all it does is it gets all the layers from the current document. And the thing with Dynamo is that when you put it into a scripting environment like that, it really opens up something really powerful. So for example, you can do expression checks, so regex. You can find, you know, little help utilities to put that together. It's pretty easy. You don't have to know the coding at all. Like, for example, I use a program called Espresso, but there's tons of them out there. Like, for example, if you want 4 letters, 4 capitalized letters, you know, you can say A to Z, exactly 4 of them. it generates a code for you, and then you can just kind of insert that into your overall code kind of thing. And when you're done, you can just paste that in. So right now what I'm doing is, let me just take a look at that. What I'm doing is checking that, okay, it starts with a letter, then a dash, then 4 capitalized letters, another dash, and then 4 capitalized letters. So that's my standard. So we can check all the layers in the current drawing by that standard, and then just have a little node kind of separate the ones that meet the criteria into one list, and the ones that don't into another list. So some of them, like I was pretending that I need like one discipline major category and a subcategory. Some of them don't have a subcategory. That's why it got caught. So if I'm checking for those, yeah, I can identify which ones are not meeting the standard, and then basically just export that out to a CSV, for example. And I do have the CSV there. So non-standard layers, like I'll just open that up in Notepad. So, you know, you can just kick out a list of layers that don't meet the standard. Then you can sort of pass it around, decide what to do with it amongst other decision makers, or maybe it's just a list, like a to-do list for you, for you to replace them with something else, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's how you can manage layers. Okay, so I have a few minutes more. Let's take a look at the final tool here. So description keys and figure prefix databases. How can we clean those up? Now these work the same way as a layer boss as well. So you can export the description keys. You can export the figure prefix database, and then basically take a look at them in an Excel spreadsheet. So these are the lists. These are basically the codes that you would find to automatically, when you bring in your survey, automatically replace, you know, put in different blocks for the survey symbols. So this kind of thing. Well, since, you know, putting it in the Excel environment, I don't have too many here to work with, but just didn't have one set up in this drawing. But you can basically take a look at what codes you have and take a look at what the settings are. And again, these settings are sort of error checked or like input checked, so that there are drop downs as to what you can choose, so that, you know, it smooths the process of importing it back into the drawing. So you can check those, you can edit them, and generate them as well. So we'll take a look at more of the generation part in the next sessions, but just to give you a little preview, right? Let's take a look at, right. So I'll close that for now. Okay. You just widen these columns a little bit. So basically, I'll just insert a column there. Basically what I started with a CSV file, and it's basically just a PNEZD. And, you know, you can use Excel again to just use formulas. You know, just what this formula does right here is just look for the first space and then drop everything afterwards. So you can kind of see that. So FDIP, it just kept the FD, where it says these codes for, you know, begin, end, and that kind of thing. It's going to drop all those codes. And then basically, once it does that, I'll just delete that column and redo this one. You can do something like generate a unique list out of that. So advanced, copy to another location, And what I'm gonna do is basically select these. I know there's 500 and something rows, so I'm just gonna go 502. Yeah, I think there are 502 rows. Copy that into list and criteria range. Select where you want to copy it to. Check the unique records only on and just go okay. That generates a unique list of codes without all the extra stuff at the end, right? And that's something that you can kind of paste into your description keys spreadsheet and then import that in. Right? And of course, when it comes to description keys are case sensitive, right? So you can, you can clean that up. Just, I'm not sure why that one has a, I'll just call it I1. Right, you can clean that up. Now, description keys is case sensitive, so you can have multiple versions. So J1. Oops. Lower. Yeah, go with I1, right? So you can have multiple versions and put it into one list and put it into, that kind of thing. So once you get one set done with all the properties that you want in the figure, in the description key set spreadsheet, you can copy that, manipulate it to get it all to lowercase, or maybe one even proper case, first letter capitalized, and create copies so that you catch all sorts of, in case the surveyor puts it in the wrong way, you can catch that as well. But of course, we are trying to trim it down, so maybe you just have the uppercase as well. So, okay, so that's basically the tool. So just to review, Linetype Manager to take a look at your line types, review them, delete any ones you don't need. Template tracker to keep track of text annotation styles and layers, hunt them down and get rid of them, swap them, that kind of thing. And then as far as object layers, drawing layers and survey, description keys and figure prefix databases are concerned, you can export them out into Excel and just use full leverage of the Excel formulas and open it up to other tools as well, like Dynamo, like visual scripting, or FME as well, if you have, data transforming tools as well, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's pretty much what I have for you. Now, if you need any extra support on those tools, we do have support across the country. So we have both the sales team to help you out with the CTC tools if you're interested in looking at those, and the technical team to help you out if you run into any questions. So with that, I would like to thank you for joining the webinar. And if you have any questions, please send us questions in our way through our email. And we also have other sessions coming up. So we have build and update to new standards on Tuesday, October 19th, and ongoing maintenance to keep teams efficient on Tuesday, October 26th. So hopefully I'll see you there, and thank you very much for joining.